All right, what's up, my friends? Welcome to my all-be-one complete set review. Every single card, constructed, limited. We're giving out awards for best in show, sleeper card, trap card, and Bombin Common. And of course, we're just doing all the cards. So far, we did white, blue, and black. Also, if YouTube missed them, go watch them for sure. Full set review will be up on YouTube tonight. Definitely look for that. And let's get right to it. But first, reminder, 10 New Brews is going to be next Thursday the 2nd. Look for that. Probably my favorite piece of content that I do. I'll be live on stream. I'll be up on YouTube. I do cool stuff. Ink.com article about all the decks. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And then Paladar Brew is going to be on the 11th. Free to play if you're a subscriber. Free to play with prizes in the Discord. If you're a Paladar driver, get in the Discord. And all the info's in there for sure. Check that out. It's red time. Let's do this. All will be won right off the bat.
It's a trap.
Trap card. This card makes for some combos. This is a 5-mana enchantment. Whenever one or more counters are put on a permanent or player, all be one deals that much damage to target opponent, creature opponent controls, or planeswalker opponent controls. So you play your counter thing, you start damaging thing. There are a number of cards in Magic that add a counter when you deal damage. They go infinite with this. War Elemental, there's a few others. That's cute and all. But this card's pretty bad. It's 5 mana, do nothing. Unless you're comboing, you're getting very minimal value off of this. So you play a creature with counters on it, deal 2 damage somewhere or whatever. It's not worth the squeeze at all. Despite being the face card of a set, despite having super cool art, that's the name of the movie. This is mostly just a commander card. This is a go really, really big card. And it's worded as it is and not any target because you need to target yourself, I guess. No, it doesn't actually make sense either. I have no idea, honestly. You can't target your own stuff. But yeah, so it's a commander card. It's kind of a cool build around, but don't plan on playing this card in standard or any competitive format. It's just not there. It's just not there. And then in limited, it's just not good enough. The thing is that most of the time you're adding 1 counter, and 1 damage is not really worth enough. Say you deal 5. Say you play this card, you untap, and you play a card with 4 oil counters on it and deal 4 damage. That's still 5 mana, 4 damage isn't even good. So, card's not great. It's a trap card. I don't know if it's a trap card, honestly. I just name it a set. People like cards with name of sets in them. I don't know, whatever. Can't take off turn 5 in modern day Magic. You just can't do it. Awaken the Sleeper. 4 mana for a sorcery. It's a threaten. And then if the creature is equipped, you may destroy equipment on the creature. Kind of a cool variation on a threaten effect, because this actually affects the board, right? So you steal a 4 mirroring creature or a creature with a different equipment on it. You get to attack with it. Ideally, you sacrifice it for value. There is an Antugu Husk kind of card in the format. So that's kind of cool. Just the usual. I feel like literally every damn set, it's just like, okay, I'll build the Threatened Sack deck. Okay, cool. But this has value also, which is kind of cool because you can get to kill the equipment. It's an uncommon, so not as easy to get to build a sack deck. If a Threaten is common and a Sack Outlet's common, it's usually pretty easy to build, but it's an uncommon. And yeah, that's basically it. I don't know. It's a Threaten. It's a usual Threaten effect. Decent sideboard card against equipments. That's it. It is what it is. Moving on. Don't play it constructed. Axiom Engraver. 2 mana for a 1/3. ETBs with 2 oil counters on it. Remove an oil counter to rummage. Discard a card, then draw a card. The card itself is only okay. But there are a lot of cards that care about oil counters in the set. And if this is a synergy enabler for those, that's pretty cool, honestly. So it's an okay card. Pretty fillery. There's not much graveyard stuff in this set either. So if you're discarding a card for value, awesome. But it won't happen too often. So kind of a whatever kind of filler card. Speaking of filler cards, Barbed Batterfist. 2 mana for a 4 Mirrodin equipment. So once again, the 4 Mirrodin mechanic makes a 2/2 that ETBs with the equipment attached to the equipment. So this effectively is a 2 mana 3/1 that leaves behind an equipment that gives +1/-1, which is not particularly good, honestly. So it's okay. Obviously, a 3/1 for two is fine. And then being an artifact is fine. And then the equipment it leaves behind is, mildly passable. If you want to get your 2/2, through their 3/3, you can make it a 3/1. But all in all, just like a kind of fillery card. I do think that the the 4 Mirrodin equipments are going to be undervalued at first by most players. They are quite good, but I think this is just like, it's okay. You know, not quite Skull Clamp. Blade Graft Aspirant. 3 mana for a 2/3 menace. Equipment spells cost 1 less, which is important for cards like this. It'll cost 1. And then activated abilities of equipment you control that target this cost 1 less to activate. I think this card's sneakily very good. I think this is one of the cards that makes the equipment deck come together, because what makes the 4 Mirrodin cards so good is the fact that they leave behind this equipment in play. So it's extra value, but it's a little bit clunky. This card helps make it less clunky. And it does it as a 2/3 menace for 3, which is also just fine. That's kind of sweet, honestly. I think this card's pretty good. So I think this card's pretty good. It's funny, it's a Phyrexian, and it's very good with the anti-Phyrexian mechanic. But that's Magic for you, you know. But definitely a good draft card for sure. I like it a lot. It's cool. Blazing Crescendo. So for an instant, creature gets +3/+1 on a turn. Exile the top card of your library until the end of the next turn. You may play that card. So kind of a riff on the cantrip pub spell, but much more difficult in limited because you might not always be able to play the card. You know, when you're playing Constructed and you're playing Light Up a Stage or Expressive Iteration, you build your deck in a manner where you can almost always play the card. All your cards cost 1, 2, or 3. But in limited, you might mill a 5-drop or 6-drop or 7-drop or whatever and just can't play it, you know? So it isn't until the end of your next turn, which is nice because you might tap out for it and still play the card. But this is going to miss some amount of a time too. And the problem is that +3/+1 is also not enough to win a lot of combats, you know, where you have to be just a little bit smaller than your opponent to win the combat. And if you end up just like trading off, it's not a very good trick either. So I think this card's fine. Obviously, this can be card advantage, but it's not guaranteed. The sizing isn't great either. You know, if the sizing of the format is a lot of like 2/2s running into each other, or 3/3s running into each other, this will work well. But without trample or without some sort of extra effect, I think it's a little too iffy. So it's a cool idea. It's a cool design. I like the take on the card, but I think it's just not really quite there. Cacophony. Scamp. 1 mana for a 1 goblin. Goblin, hell yeah, we got some goblins here. Whenever it does combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. If you do, proliferate. Whenever it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So kind of a better version of the Goblin Arsonist kind of school of goblins. This card's pretty good. So it's important to note that this card's a warrior. And there's a card legal in Explorer, Pioneer, Historic that is a 1 mana white trick that attaches an equipment to a warrior. And then if you put that hammer onto this creature, you kill them. So you turn 1 this card, turn 2 hammer, equip, attack. They take 10, sacrifice it, they take 10, the game is over. So that's probably the effect this card's going to be most known for, which is a pretty powerful effect, honestly. But the card itself isn't bad either. You know, it's a goblin. If you pump it up, you get to, like, you know, it dies, sack and deal 2, which is kind of cool. Proliferating might matter also. The fact that you can just, like, sacrifice it out of nowhere is kind of cool as well. So definitely a card's going to see some play for sure. I can't talk today, folks. I'm sorry. So many words. But yeah, card's cool for sure. Fine limited card. Goblin Bonk Prophet. Exactly. Card's cool. Definitely watch out for this card. Capricious Hellraiser. No awards. Red 3, 4/4 dragon, mythic. No haste. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you have 9 or more cards in your graveyard. 9's a lot, folks. 9 is a lot of cards, alright? When it ETBs, exile 3 cards at random from your graveyard. Choose a non-creature, non-land card from among them and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So, the ceiling here is very high, obviously, right? There's no ceiling on how good that card can be. It can be an Ugin, it can be an Invoke Despair, or whatever it is. But it's random. And you're likely to have some lands, some creatures in your graveyard. There's a lot. That's a lot of cards, you know? So, we're now playing this 4/4, trying to make it flashback a card that might or might not work, and then it's kind of random. It's just like a lot of things. So our deck needs to like put cards in our graveyard at a very good rate, have cards you want to cast, resolve this card. It's just like so many different hoops and stuff. And then the floor of this card is a 6 mana 4/4 with no haste, which is just terrible also. So I think this card is just too many hoops. It's kind of cool. And the fact that you can do some busted stuff with this is kind of fun also. But I think that the costs here are pretty high. And if you're going all in on the graveyard like this, and your payoff is just a 4/4 for 3, that's not very exciting either. So, kind of interesting card. Probably a card I'll build around for sure. It's a fun brew card. You know, it's kind of like, it actually reminds me of Marvel Snap a little bit, where like you're getting this random effect. You're kind of like just building this deck, trying to do this thing, and hopefully it happens. You know, but yeah, kind of a fun, kind of a card. Kind of a card that looks fun to build around, but probably not super competitive. And then in limited, it is pretty good in limited because 6 mana for a 4/4 that casts a spell from your graveyard is pretty good also. But you get, once again, you can just whiff. You know, the cards at random might not be spells, so I think in limited this card's probably fine. I doubt you'll cast it for 3, but that's okay. If you're playing a lot of non-creature, non-land spells in your deck, and you can reliably flash back a spell with this, it's probably pretty good. But overall, you know, I think this card's a little trappy. Up next is Chimney Rabble. More goblins. Yes, please. Chaz is letting me know, apparently, story-wise, that the red Phyrexians are actually on the good side. I didn't know that. Raise your hand in chat, or leave a comment on YouTube if you think Magic should have a TV show. Because there's a lot of cool story stuff happening. I never know any of it. Because all I ever get is what's on the cards. And I would love to see a show or something like that. Please stop screwing things up and get it done. That'd be really, really cool. But yeah, so Chimney Rabble here is a 3/3 haste for 4. It's a goblin, and it makes a goblin token. This is a pretty good pretty good draft card here. You know, the 3/3 that makes a token is often a fine draft card. Giving it haste is like pretty good, honestly. So very solid draft card here, I think. The token's not an artifact, which kind of sucks. But yeah, solid draft card. Nothing too crazy, but I think it's a little bit above filler level, but not super exciting. Churning Reservoir. 1 mana for an artifact. Beginning of your upkeep, put an oil counter on another target non-token artifact creature you control or creature you control. Pay 2, make a 1/1 goblin token. Only do this if an oil counter was removed from a permanent you controlled this turn, or a permanent with an oil counter was put on a graveyard this turn. That's a lot of freaking words for a 1/1. Whew, boy. Okay, so the good news here is just a constant source of oil counters, which can be relevant for a number of things. But this feels like a lot of words to do not a lot of stuff. You know, is it worth a card to put some oil counters around? Is it worth 3 mana to make a token? So overall, this feels like your kind of like typical limited build around that isn't really good enough. I could be wrong here, obviously, but it's pretty hard to activate. You don't really get much. It's a decent oil enabler. If you're like super, super oily and you really want to get oil stuff going, sure, I guess, but I don't know. It just seems kind of eh. Dragonwing Glider. This is your Goldspan dragon of the set. 5 mana for a 4 Mirrodin equipment. So it comes into play with a 2/2. Creature has +2/+2, flying and haste. So basically this is a 4/4 flying haste for 5. That's like the most baseline, you know, rare. It's in almost every set. And the equip cost is 5. For limited, this card's obviously busted. Phenomenal limited card. And constructed, this card's too weak. Glorybringer, Goldspan Dragon, Thundermaw Hellkite. These are all insanely good cards in constructed because they have really good abilities. Just being a 4/4 haste flyer for 5 is not good enough. Not in this day and age. So without making treasures, without killing things, without being a 5/5, it's just not really good enough for constructed. And then being an equipment is kind of okay, sure, whatever. You know, it's fine. But don't think it's there. I don't think the synergy is there for it. If you're cost reducing, maybe it could be kind of cool. Obviously, you can equip later and put it on things, but it's so expensive. So I think this card is a phenomenal limited card that just falls a bit short constructed. That's really all I was to say, honestly. Exuberant Fuseling, another goblin, which is great. 1 mana for a Phyrexian Goblin Warrior. It's a trampler. The wording here is a bit weird, so make sure you follow along. It gets +1/+0 for each oil counter on it. Whenever it enters the battlefield, or whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard, put an oil counter on. So basically, it enters with 1 counter on it already. So it's a 1/1. So by itself, it's a 1/1 trample. Then whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard, you put a counter on it. Now it's 2/1, 3/1, 4/1. That's awesome, actually. So this card is cool in like sacrificey decks where you're like sacrificing treasures and stuff like that. It can be a 2-1, a 3-1, a 4-1. I actually built a deck in Standard a while back that was like a mono red, like sacrifice artifacty deck. I think fits perfectly into that, which is awesome. And also, there are a lot of cards that care about oil counters, and this is just a cheap creature with an oil counter on it, which is great too. So I think this card's really good. I like this card a lot. Again, I know you look at the card, see 0-1 trample. It's a 1-1 to start, and then it goes from there, which is kind of cool. So I think this card's kind of sweet. Plays well with Bloods, plays well with treasures, and so on and so forth. Volt Surge, etc., etc., etc. Card's sweet. I like it a lot, and super cool card. Definitely can see play constructed. It's not a 2-1, it's a 1-1. And then it tokens have to go to the graveyard. Yeah, anvil stuff, etc., etc. Treasures don't work. Why not? Treasures also go to the graveyard. All tokens, when they die, go to the graveyard, then cease to exist. That's how tokens work. So, card sweet. And then limited card seems very good also. You just like trade off with things and it just grows. So, cool card. Forge Hammer Centaurian. 3 mana for a 3-2. Common. Whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put an oil counter on it. Whenever it attacks, you may remove 2 oil counters from it. If you do, creature can't block this turn. This is the kind of card where like it could be good. You know, the 3-2 that makes blocking hard is usually a pretty good common, but it starts with nothing. And it takes a lot of work to get the first counter on there. And the first counter is good, but you know, mostly filler level. I think if it came in with a single counter, it'd be a lot better, but getting 2 counters before you can use it is tough because the 3-2 will often just die in combat at some point, so not very exciting. Free from Flesh. 1 mana instant, +2/+2, put 2 oil counters on the creature. This card's good, honestly. You know, I think that the 1 mana tricks are great. Again, I'm a huge fan of 1 mana tricks. They're hard to play around. And again, there's a lot of things that care about oil counters. This card does a good job of putting them on there. Plays well with the last card, obviously, right? You could like save it in combat, have a counter for next turn, so on and so forth. Plays well with the 1-drop for sure. I think this card has an outside shot in Constructed because it's so cheap and efficient at what it does. And good limited card too. So super solid card. Like it a lot. Furnace Punisher, our best in show for red. 3 mana for a 3-3 menace. So pretty good body. Beginning of each player's upkeep, it deals 2 damage to that player. Also, they control 2 or more basic lands. So we finally see a card that punishes folks for playing too many non-basics. Almost every mana base in Standard right now is a 3-color mana base that plays like 1 basic land. So Grixis, Esper, Mardu, mid-range Soup. And this card does a pretty good job of dealing with that. It will deal 2 damage almost guaranteed because it triggers in their upkeep. So they're tapped out. They'll take at least 2 off it, which is great. Having Menace is good because it can get through blockers. And then it's a 3-3. So there's not that a cut down, which is also very good too. Just a really solid card. If you're playing mono red, playing a beatdown deck, super cool. Even a 2-color deck, this card's reasonable. Just good. You know, not incredible. Not like a world-beating crazy card. But very, very solid. Like the card a lot. And that's it, really. Limited cards, not as good because the rider text isn't as important. But, you know, a 3-3 menace for 3 is also fine limited too. So, good card. Like it a lot. Best in show for red. Furnace Punisher. Up next is Furnace Strider. 5 mana for a 4-5. ETBs with 2 oil counters on it. Remove an oil counter to give a creature you control haste. So it's important to note this can target itself. So this is basically a 4-5 haste for 5 that comes into play with 1 oil counter on it. That's pretty good, honestly. That's pretty solid. You know, a 4-5 haste for 5 is pretty good. Giving things haste is pretty good too. Oil counters obviously matter limited. You're not going to want a ton of these, but I think this is a pretty good curve topper if you're playing some oily stuff and you're just beaten down. Card's cool. Cool limited card. Gleeful Demotion. This card's something. Whew, boy. Gleeful Demotion is an upgrade to Kuldotha Rebirth. And if you remember Kuldotha Rebirth, raise your hand in chat, please. All right, I need my Kuldotha Rebirthers in chat to help me out. 1 red sorcery. Destroy target artifact. If you control that artifact, make 3 goblin tokens. So, of course, Kuldotha Rebirth is this card, but you can only target your own stuff. Whereas this card has the ability to be a 1 mana shatter, which is pretty good, as well as your own stuff. So we can now play 8 Rebirth in Modern, which is super cool. And card sweet. I like it a lot. So really cool card. Needs to be built around, of course. But this is the kind of card that would go very, very well with the other Goblin 1-drop as far as killing your own artifacts. Plays well with the synthesizer and treasure tokens and everything else, which is kind of cool. Target your Darksteel Citadel. Woo! Now you're doing it. And it's funny, actually. It's actually better than Rebirth in that scenario, where Rebirth was a sacrifice effect. This is a destroy effect. So if you target your Citadel, you actually keep it, which is kind of cool, too. So, very good card. Rebirth is already somewhat playable, and this card is much better. Excited for this card. In Limited, less exciting. Obviously, Shatter's pretty good. I think you'll be using this more on your opponent's stuff in Limited, which is still pretty good, I guess. But a cool card nonetheless. Love it a lot. Great card. Super sweet. Hazardous Blast. 5 mana for a sorcery. Deal 1 to your opponent's stuff. Creatures can't block. This is like your bad, board stall breaker in Limited. You don't want to play this card typically. It's an okay sideboard card for board stalls and one toughness decks, but overall not very exciting. Hex Gold Halberd. 2 mana for an artifact for Mirrodin. Makes 2/2. As long as it's your turn, the equipped creature has first strike and trample. This is a phenomenal draft card. Phenomenal draft card. And this is what I'm saying about the 4 Mirrodin cards being a lot better than they look. By itself, this is a 2/2 for 2 that has first strike and trample on your turn, which is good. That's fine. There's a common like that in white. Super, super solid. But when this card dies, now you have the ability to give any of your creatures first strike and trample as the game goes on, and then move it around as well. And that's an amazing mana sink to have later in the game. So this card's phenomenal. I think this card's excellent. I think all the 4 Mirrodin cards are going to play better than they look. And the ones that are actively good are going to be really good. So I think this card is an excellent, excellent draft card. Really, really good. Constructed, probably not, but phenomenal limited card. Go with Death Touch. Go with huge creatures. Puts it on a 5/5. Good luck. Good luck blocking that one, So super, super good. Like it a lot. And then honestly, you know what? I lied. This card is playable in Constructed because it's a 2 mana artifact. That's also an equipment. That's also a creature. And as we'll see, there are some good payoffs for equipment later on as well. So we'll get to that too. But I think this card's pretty good, actually. This card's great. Like it a lot. 10 new brews. You'll probably see this card if I had to guess. Hex Gold Slash. Bombin Common. Card's great. 1 red instant. 2 damage to a creature. If it's toxic, 4 damage. This is just like your bread and butter top tier limited rule spell. 4 damage for 1 mana is a lot. This can kill some of the larger creatures. Kills smaller creatures too. 1 mana, super efficient. Not going to see playing Constructed. It's just worse than Volt Surge is. Unless there's a lot of 4/4 toxic creatures that really need to die. But great draft card. Super, super good. Really good art too. I like the art a lot. It does kill the toxic 4/4 in green for 3. We'll get to that in a little bit. Which could be a thing, I guess. But yeah. Definitely not Electrostatic Blast exactly. Or for all my boomers out there. But definitely a good draft card. That's our Bombin Common. Nothing too crazy here. Pretty simple. Koth, Fire of Resistance. Again, we have 10 Planeswalkers in the set. 5 completed, 5 not. Koth, part of the resistance here. And Koth is a little one-dimensional, but it's a really cool card. In that it's a red card that's not aggressive. So we have red, 2. Planeswalker, 4 loyalty, pretty good. +2, search for a mountain and put it in your hand. So we have a 4 loyalty Planeswalker that +2 to draw a card. That's pretty damn good, honestly. It goes to 6 immediately. Starts making card advantage. Then we have -3 here to deal damage to a creature equal to the number of mountains you control, which is pretty sweet, honestly. Just like the Chandra sort of, ETB, deal 4 to a creature. And then we have -7. You get an emblem with a mountain ETBs, deal 4. And that's also a finisher too. So this is like a controlling red Planeswalker. And there are some good controlling red cards, as well as the 2-drop that counts your mountains, which is like a 4/4 for 2, which is pretty cool also. So I like this a lot. I like the big red decks. I've always liked big red, sort of like, mid-rangey, controlly red decks. And this card plays perfectly with that. Plays well alongside Jaya and Chandra, Dress to Kill. Same idea. A lot of kill spells could go here as well. Card sweet. Honestly, I like it a lot. Definitely a cool card. Not amazing because drawing mountains is obviously not super ideal, but super cool card. Like it a lot. I'm in. High loyalty. I'm in. And then for limited, if you're playing on mountains, it's great, obviously. It's Planeswalker. They're good and limited. Kuldalfa Cackler. 3 mana for a 2/3 trample. Whenever it attacks, you get +1/+1 on a turn where X the number of permanents you control oil counters on them. This card's great. There's oil counters on everything, I feel like, in red and green. And this thing could easily be a 5/3 trample very early in the game. Play a 1-drop oil creature, 2-drop oil creature, play this, play an oil creature on turn 3, attack for 5. That's awesome. So Trample's great here. Good board breaker. Just a very solid draft card for your oil decks. Magmatic Sprinter. They made up for a 3/2 haste. Some fine stats. Pretty cool card. When it ETBs, you put 2 oil counters on artifact or creature you control. That's very good, obviously, because oil counters are very, very valuable. However, beginning of your end step, you return it to your hand unless you remove the counters. So this card's kind of cool because you can play it, put the oil counter somewhere else for value and attack, and if they block, you gain value. If they don't block, you gotta bounce it. Now you have this recurring way to keep oil countering over and over again, which is kind of cool too. So this card's sweet, honestly. A really, really cool card. Just play it on rate. This is a 3/2 haste for 3, which is fine. And the upside here is tremendous. And late in the game, adding a bunch of counters. You can keep it around if you want to. Super cool. Super cool card. Not really there in Constructed, I don't think. But it is a super cool card for Limited. Again, pretty cool art. Molten Rebuke, 5 mana sorcery. Deal 5 or destroy equipment. This is your standard bad kill spell Unlimited. You don't want to play this card, but if you have no removal, you'll play it. Simple as that. Near Sacrifice, 2 mana for a sorcery. Additional cost to play this spell. Sacrifice an artifact creature, mana value X. Deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures. So, 2 things jump out at me here. In Limited, this is a really cool way to make use of your Formidable equipments, right? So you play the equipment, trade the creature off. Now you have this like 4 mana equipment just sitting in play. It's kind of clunky to use. Just sack it and deal 4. And Pyrotechnics, you know? So that's pretty powerful. I think if you're playing the 4 Mirrodin cards, if you have artifacts around, that's pretty powerful. And dealing 5 across creatures is very, very good. And Constructed, the draw to this card is Mirror Enforcer. If you play this card in your Affinity deck, you know, you can play a Mirror Enforcer or whatever, or a similar card on turn 2, Thought Monitor, and then sacrifice it to deal 7. That's a pretty cool sideboard effect to have access to in an Affinity deck in Modern and stuff like that. Can't go face, but again, in a sideboard matchup against a creature deck, being able to deal 7 damage everywhere is pretty awesome too. So, like the effect a lot here. Definitely pretty cool. More of a fringe card in Constructed, but could see play because the ceiling's pretty high. And then in Limited, this could be doing some pretty nasty stuff. So low cost, plays well with the Archon, the artifacts, and so on and so forth. Oxida Finisher. 7 mana Ogre Rebel. 7/5 Trample.
Good lord. Gigantism.
It's big. Has affinity for equipment. So, once again, if you're playing a lot of Mirrodin cards, card's pretty good. This card only needs to cost like 5 to be really, really good. I think at 6 mana, this card's still pretty good. At 7, it's too expensive, but this card gets down to like 4 or even 3 mana. This card looks really, really good, really, really fast. There's a big payoff for playing equipment. Pretty powerful draft card. Probably not playing this card in Constructed. I mean, you could, in theory, you know, cards like Rabbit Battery count. So all the cards from Kamigawa are very important to make note of because they are creatures that are also equipment. So if you're playing like Rabbit Battery, you know, Lizard Spikes or whatever, and you're also playing the 4 Mirrodin 2-drops, it wouldn't be that hard to get like 3 or 4 equipments in play and cast this thing for like 4, which is kind of cool. So maybe outside shot in Constructed, but definitely a great Limited card. Rebel Salvo. Wake up, folks. This card's the real deal. We've been discussing equipment stuff a lot, and I think if there is an equipment deck, this is the draw. So, on face value, Rebel Salvo is just Soul Sear. 3 mana for an instant, 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker, and loses indestructible. That's pretty good, honestly. You know, we see people are playing the Spirit version of this in Standard to kill Sheoldred, Rending, whatever the hell it's called, because 5 damage is a very, very important flashpoint. And that card is passable but not great. So the floor here is passable but not great, right? 3 mana, deal 5. If you have 1 equipment in play, this card's excellent. 2 mana, deal 5, instant speed. That's excellent, like excellent. If you have 2 equipment in play, this card is legacy power level. One red mana, deal 5 to a creature or planeswalker. That's insane. That's, you know, Unholy Heat levels of good, and really, really, really good. So this card, if there is an equipment deck, this card is the linchpin. And then even if you're just playing, say you're playing mono red, right? And you're playing 4 Rabbit Battery, that's it. The card's still great. You know, this card will be a Soul Sear a lot of the time. Will occasionally be cost 2 mana, maybe 1 mana, which is great too. So in those scenarios, it's pretty good. In the equipment deck, it's insane. I think this card is very, very good. And again, very, very important card in the context of the format because killing Sheoldred is really, really important, especially for red decks. So this is a huge one. Rebel Salvo, sleeper for the set. Obviously, bomb limited card. not a bomb, but like it's a a high quality limited removal spell, first pickable, very very good. Red Sun's Twilight. This is the red version of a Twilight. Red X. Destroy the X target artifacts. If X is 5 or more. For each artifact destroyed, so make a copy and exile on the end step. This card is it's cool. In constructed, it can be a sort of super shatter effect if there's some sort of deck that needs to you need to kill artifacts or whatever. Sure, sideboard, whatever. And then you could also build a deck in a manner where you kill your own stuff and then get a bunch of copies of it. That's kind of cool as well. Pretty hard to make work though. Very clunky. 7 mana is a lot for a sorcery. So on the whole, I think this card is going to be a fringe sideboard card in constructed. In limited, however, like the other Zeniths, it's insanely good. If you ever cast this for 7 mana in limited, you're going to win the game probably. It's important to note that you need to set 5 different targets, I believe. So if you want to use... I'm sorry, up to, never mind. It's worded in a way where you can kill only one thing for 7 mana and still copy it. So good job, Watsy. Well done. So in limited, you kill 3 creatures, get copies, act with them. It's very, very powerful, obviously. Game-breaking limited card for sure. So limited bomb, constructed fringe sideboard card, but it's a cool card. Resistance Sky Warden. This is a pretty fun card because there was a common in like New Phyrexia or whatever, or Mirrored and Besieged. That was like this card, but not there yet. Go look it up. Fun flavor. But this is a 5/5 for 5 with Menace and Reach. That's just a good draft card. 5/5 Reach is great. Menace is pretty good too. It's good on offense and defense. Just a solid 5-drop. Not a card you're slamming. Not a card you're always going to play, but a pretty high value card in limited. Solid but not flashy. Sawblade Scamp. 1 mana for a Phyrexian Beast. Raging Goblin. 1/1 haste. If you cast a non-creature spell, put a counter on this. You can tap to remove a counter from this to deal 1 damage to an opponent. Cheap source of oil counters. The 1 damage effect is like, all right, the board stalls out. You can kind of like, dink, dink, dink one, dink one. So a little bit of reach there too. Not the most powerful card ever, but I think if you're like synergizing and want more oil stuff, this can do that. But kind of an okay, a little underpowered card. Shrapnel Slinger, 2 mana for a 2/2. When it ETBs, you may sacrifice this creature if you do Shatter. This card's really good. Because 2 mana for a Shatter is obviously passable if you need to kill an artifact. This is also just a 2/2 as well. So we have a split card here, basically Grizzly Bears and Shatter, which is pretty good. And you can also sacrifice a Might or some other smaller artifact creature, or any creature, and kill an artifact too, which is pretty great as well. So yeah, pretty cool card. Fine draft card. Fringe constructed card, I think, honestly. But correct. So you can sacrifice yourself. So what I'm trying to say is it's a Shatter by itself. So Slowbad Iron Goblin. Poor Slowbad, huh? It's a bad day to be Slowbad. Slowbad here, we can see, has been Phyrexianized. 3 mana for a 3/3. Tap, sacrifice an artifact. Add an amount of mana equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value, and spend this only to cast artifacts or activate abilities of artifacts. So kind of cool in that, like, you can sacrifice some random like Prismatic Prism to get 2 mana for like a Cityscape level or something like that. But probably not worth the squeeze here. It's a 3/3 for 3 with no effect on the board really. Kind of a fun card, but without haste or like something else to make this card a little more exciting, it's kind of just a whatever card. In limited, it's great. Not great. It's fine. It's a 3/3, little extra value there for sure. But yeah. Sulfum Mayhem Dominus. No word. 4 mana for a 5/4, which is obviously like an okay rate. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. And you can pay Phyrexian 1, discard 2 cards, and make it indestructible. This card's overrated. Plain and simple. This card's fine. But the thing about this card is that it's a 5/4 for 4 with no effect on the board immediately and requires other cards to be good. You can discard 2 cards to try to make it indestructible, but it costs mana to do that. Now it's a 5-drop. Discarding 2 cards kind of sucks, honestly. Still gets exiled, still gets bounced, etc., etc. The non-combat clause here is the real kicker because it requires you to have burn spells still in your hand and then also have the double damage matter. So I have like a Play with Fire in my hand, and if I want to kill their Mirror Breaker or whatever thing, like I'm just going to kill it and the damage won't matter. So if you're in a spot where you untap and just like Lightning Strike them twice and deal 12, cool. But that means you untap with your sorcery speed 4-drop that lives also as well. So as a 5-drop, this card is not great either because you risk them killing it in response. It's just not really super exciting, honestly. I think this card's fine. The kind of card that's like a bomb in limited because it's just like super solid. But in constructed, what deck really wants this card? You know, if your mid-range deck wants a 4-drop, play Shieldred. If your aggro deck wants a finisher, play something better than this. Not a control card. Just not a great card. You know, great limited card. It's a 5/4 for 4 with upside, sure. But all in all, unless you're discarding cards for value, Throw a possibility. We've seen this card before. Pretty cool flavor and flavor text here. Just discard, draw. Not a lot of graveyard stuff in this set, which makes this card much less exciting than it would be in other formats. Other formats that have things like escape and so on and so forth make this card pretty good. In this format, it feels like it's like, Urabrask's Anointer. This is the FTK. We've seen this card a lot too. FTK for theme of set. Whether it's creature types, whether it's, enchantments, whatever. This is a 4/2 for 4. ETB deals X damage to any target, X is the number of permanent you control with oil counters on it. It's like an artifact for some reason, which doesn't really matter that much. But there's obviously a lot of oil counter stuff in the set. This is going to be a very, very good limited card. A lot of the red and green cards have oil counters on them, so it should do 2 or 3 damage pretty often. But yeah, solid limited card. You get the idea. What's an FTK? Oh god, zoomer alert. Flametongue Kavu. It was the original card like this from Plane Shift about 20 years ago. It was a 4/2 for 4, but ETB to deal 4. Urabrask's Forge. The mana for an artifact. Beginning of combat in your turn, put an oil counter on the Forge. Then make an X1 Phyrexian token with trample and haste, where X is the number of oil counters. Sacrifice at the end of turn. So kind of like a ball lightning machine, right? So the first turn you play this makes a 1/1 haste that goes away. Then a 2/1, then a 3/1, then a 4/1, then a 5/1. And that's a pretty powerful effect as far as like if the game's going to go long. Honestly, a pretty cool card if you're like playing kind of a big red deck and want like a wing edition that goes, as the game goes on. Reminds me a bit of Assembled Legion, a cool Boros enchantment that costs 5. Being 3 mana is pretty good here because it is pretty cheap. So you can like get this thing online and then just leave it there. So if you're playing like a big red deck, play this on 3, play Koth on 4, kill something, and untap and just like kill things the rest of the game. And this thing will just chip away at your opponent over and over again. Pretty cool, honestly. It is a little slow. It is a little clunky. Obviously, if you're able to proliferate and get more counters on it, cool. But feels like mostly a kind of a fringy card. It's cool. It's a cool card, though. Fun design, fun build around. And then if you can sacrifice the tokens for value, it's pretty cool also. So yeah, cool card. I like it. In limited, it seems great. In limited, as long as you can take a turn off to cast this will win you the game by itself. So you can use all your other creatures to defend and just like leave this thing on offense and kind of do it that way, which is kind of cool too. There are shatters, obviously, but card's pretty sweet. Vindictive Flamestoker, mana for a Phyrexian Wizard 1/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a counter on this, an oil counter. Then you can pay 7 mana to sacrifice this, discard your hand, and draw 4 cards. But this ability costs 1 less for each oil counter. So pretty cool card, honestly. It's kind of like a Bomat Courier-esque card where you want to play this early and then use it late to discard your hand and draw 4 cards. However, 7 is a lot. That means you need to cast 6 non-creature spells to make this cost 1, Bomat Courier style. That's a lot. It also has to live, too, which is not necessarily a given. So I think this card's pretty good. It's sort of an awkward card because it's a creature, wants to play non-creatures. It's just a 1/2, kind of just hangs out, doesn't really have haste or anything like that. Obviously, if you're looking for oil counters for your creatures for synergy, it's kind of cool, but this requires you to also play spells too. So I think this card's a little too expensive. I think if this card was like, 5 to activate, it would be like actively very good. But at 7, I think it's a little bit too much. In limited, this card's definitely fine. Just sits there and play, get some counters on it, draw cards later. But at constructed, I think this is a little unexciting, honestly, unfortunately. It's a really cool card, but kind of bummer. Volt Charge, reprint, great draft card. Lightning Bolt plus Proliferate. Great limited card, instant speed removal spell, a lot of upside. Great oil counters, just great limited card. Constructed, probably not, but limited, excellent. Volshock Splitter. Another card people are going to underrate. For Mirrodin. 4 mana equipment. Creature gets +2/+0. Equip for 3. So this is a 4 mana for a 4/2, which doesn't seem great. But remember, you just block with it. Play it and block with it. And now you have his equipment in play, which just sits there And you can just keep putting on things, making things get bigger. Use the artifact sacrifice, which is super cool. I think this card's very, very solid. You can't play a million of these, but I think this is like the poster child for this card. Looks kind of bad, but it's going to play very, very well, I think. So, solid limited card for sure, and like it a lot. That's it. That's red. So, to recap, Best in Show, Furnace Punisher. Sleeper card, Rebel Salvo. The trap card, All Will Be One. That's the name of the show. And Hex Gold Slash is our Bombin Common. That's red, folks. Green is next. You two folks, love you. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's go.